Well, week 3 of Blues hockey has come and gone, and the Blues sit at 5-4-0. There's been some encouraging performances and some not so encouraging performances, which really makes it difficult to get a sense of who this Blues team is, where they're at. But what's been good so far, what's been bad, and what can we predict about the rest of the season for the Blues? We're going to talk about all that and more on this episode of Note News. Bit of a shorter Note News episode today, but we're going to sort of react to the last week or so of games. It's been a while since we broke down some games, Alex, since I guess like week 2. But we got to pick up right with that Carolina Hurricanes game. The Blues are 5-4-0 now, so I'm not, it's pretty middle of the pack. So we're gonna break down what we've liked and what we haven't liked so much, and maybe like what we can give them a pass for or not. But we'll give our reactions to like a lot of Blues players and then just some trends around the Blues team today. But before we get into that, if you want to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, we'd really appreciate that. That goes a long way for us and is a great way to support us. Also following and rating the podcast wherever you listen. That's huge for us too. And you can follow us on social media at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. So all that good stuff. Alec, why don't we go ahead and jump right in, starting with do you want to pick a good thing or a bad thing? Where do you want to start?
I think there's a lot of good to talk about. I think let's start with good things.
Sure. Well, I mean, for one thing, they beat the Carolina Hurricanes, who are a pretty good team. And that was another comeback win. So that was great to see, see them see that resilience in the Blues team again. Really just like a gritty team, like we've said a lot. But was there anything in that game that you really liked that you saw from the Blues?
I liked the way that they didn't hold back against a tough opponent. They played like a team that could hang with another good team, and they did, and they came out with the win. So, yeah, I really liked their aggressiveness. I think forechecking has been a pretty good strength of this team so far, and I think Carolina was a pretty big example of that. And they were able to not crumble essentially under the pressures of a tough opponent.
Yeah, for sure. It's that thing that we've been saying. They play up to good opponents and they seem to play down to bad opponents, and it's on both sides of that coin. It's nice sometimes, but it's also frustrating at other times. But really love that win over the Canes. Love to see that. And then let's see. I want to talk about a player next. I want to talk about Jordan Kyrou, who really has been playing. He's a point per game player, right? At this point.
Yep.
And what I've really liked from him is not just the scoring ability, but his ability to play as a team player. I think that's been huge for the Blues, and just like playmaking and protecting the puck well. Like he assisted a Philip Broberg goal this week, and I believe it was against the Leafs, I want to say, but just like protected the puck well, like over a couple Leafs players, and just sort of spun around them and kind of put them in a spin cycle and assisted Broberg's goal, which was really cool to see. But beyond that, just like his defensive play has been really great, and I just feel like he's brought that side of his game to a whole new level. And you've talked about Jordan Kyrou, like potential 90-point player. So what have you liked from Jordan Kyrou that you've seen?
He's close to on pace for it if he gets a hot stretch in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just feels like his is really, we're seeing sort of the finishing touches on his like growth and his development. To me, Jordan Kyrou has always seemed like Jake Gensel who can kind of play defense. I don't think Jordan Kyrou will ever get Selke votes probably, but he's got just such a unique offensive ability. And as you said, yeah, now that he's that sort of I guess lone gunslinger mindset or like going rogue mindset that we saw early in his career has been pretty much coached out of him. It's really just all coming together for him. So happy to see him take to this coaching system and style, playing with
Mhm.
some really talented wingers, and I think he's producing better for it.
Yeah, it really has, like, in the past couple of seasons, seemed in large part like a coaching thing for him, right? Like
Hmm.
the last season's start under Craig Berube was just so rough, and he really, you know, turned his season around when Bannister took over, and is kind of right back, where he sort of picked up right where he left off, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So that's been really cool to see, from Jordan Kyrie this season. Um, all right, your turn. What do you like?
I think, I mean, it's hard not to point out that Leafs game. There was just so much good there. I think offensively, the way that the team didn't let their foot off the gas.
Yeah.
And it feels like sometimes we've definitely seen it where they come out looking slow, looking lazy. But it's like once they click in a game, it feels
Mhm.
like that it just they're not done until the final horn sounds. And even in some of the games, like in the Jets game, I actually thought that was a pretty promising game from them. I think it's hard to be mad about that performance, in
Yeah.
my opinion, because I thought that they also kind of had that offensive like click moment, and it was really exciting. It's just that sometimes Connor Hellebuck is going to do what Connor Hellebuck is gets paid to do. But yeah,
Well, that was
I
the
think
that was the Jets game though.
yeah. Yeah. So in the early I still think like even looking back to the Leafs game or the Canes game,
Okay.
um both they showed a um dominance and willingness to continue to press their advantage once they had it, which hasn't
Yeah,
been
yeah,
often.
yeah. I totally agree. Just like with the Leafs game in particular, just like constant pressure, like on the forecheck, which was really great. And um, that was their first game without Robert Thomas, right? Um, and they just really like they didn't really show it, I guess. You know what I mean? Like they just sort of rallied around and came together as a team, and that was like really seemed like a team win, which was really cool. I think the first three goals, or the first two goals were Broberg and Holloway, right? So it was cool to
Yep.
see the offer sheets boys do that, and then
And then
I think
Tex,
yeah, and then Tex, and then I think neighbors got one in there too.
I believe
Um,
so. Yeah.
but it was really funny to see our previous episode. We broke down some young Blues players that we thought were extension candidates, and we started with Broberg, Holloway, Texier, and then that night they scored in order. So that was that was pretty funny to see. Um, Love to see the young players contribute like that. It's really awesome. Speaking of young players, I mean, on the good side, Philip Broberg just continues to be great. We don't have to get like really deep into that because we've sort of exhausted that topic. But I sure do love Philip Broberg. If he can score some more, I think he could be a Norris candidate someday, which would be really cool.
I mean, he's got 6 points in 9 games. Let me double check that. Actually, it might be 7 points. Philip Broberg has 7 points in 9 games.
Hmm.
That's like that's up. I mean, I know Cale McCarr right now is
Yeah,
almost
I
leading the
was gonna
league in
say.
points as a defenseman, but getting Norris votes, I think, is looking not out of the question, which is just so crazy to think about where we were this summer, on the defense as a whole, and so.
Yeah, so thankful for for someone like Doug Armstrong who saw that situation in Edmonton and was able to capitalize on that. So Philip Broberg, defenseman of the future, love that guy. Another defenseman, maybe not of the future, but that has been playing well is Ryan Suter. So he's been elevated up to the top pair with Colton Parayko, in Nick Leddy's absence, who's on the IR right now. And Ryan Suter, dude, he's been proving us wrong. I want to say, like,
He's been
um,
balling out.
he has been he has been balling out, on both sides of the puck. He just looks really good, and is
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, just like keep running with this construction. Like as far as I'm concerned, until it stops working, like Suter Pareko and then Broberg Falk, like it's working. So
Yeah.
I'm liking like even when Letty comes back. I mean, we sort of talked about um, it sort of at length our disappointment with his performance at the beginning of the season. He hasn't played in a while, but you made a good point that he got to the top pair because he earned it, and like last season, I mean, and this season he hasn't sort of demonstrated that still, and so I do think when he comes back, drop him like maybe even to the third pair, honestly, and hope he can work his way back up. Like if he earns it again, then I'm all for that. But um, for now, I like Ryan Suter. Honestly, what about you?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is Suter's job until it isn't. This is something that I wanted to get into later, but we can now. I do think probably it just feels like there's going to be a little bit of a shelf life on this thing.
Okay.
Um, and that at some point, I think you've made this point earlier, and I very much agree that I think I want to see Broberg get his chance
Mm-hmm.
because it just feels like we've seen so much from the guy. What else is there left to do but test him at the highest level? But
Yeah.
you're right that Suter's playing so well, and you don't want to mess with a good thing. If you don't ain't broke, don't fix it type thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I guess. Um, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you or any takes or just
I also want to see Broberg Pareko, but there's a part of me that thinks like Suter Pareko is working, so is Broberg Falk, but like would Suter and Falk work? Like I wouldn't want to elevate Broberg to have a slightly better top pair when it would make maybe our second pair not as effective. So I mean, I think honestly, just ride it till it breaks is sort of what I'm thinking with this.
yeah,
And
I agree.
I definitely do want to see Broberg get looks on the top pair by the end of the season. I think that's something that they just have to know if he's like capable um, of that kind of pressure and that kind of playing time over an extended period to make sure he is what he is, I guess. But we're only 9 games in. I'm not in a huge rush for that, but I definitely do want to see it at some point. So um, a couple, good performances from the Blues on defense, which is so nice to say. Honestly, like
Hmm.
it's been so long since we could say that. So that's been great. One not so good performance on defense, sort of while we're on this topic, is excuse me, is Scott Perunovich. I feel like in his short sort of his short opportunities this week has not really taken advantage and has just looked altogether underwhelming, honestly. Like I don't know if he's necessarily been terrible. Like I wouldn't say he's like awful, but he hasn't been good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have any Scott Brunovich takes based on what we've seen from him this week?
I think my Scott Perunovich take is what it was at our last episode. When Letty gets back, he's the guy out of the lineup, and
Yeah.
he's had his run, and unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out. I think he's still a guy you could probably flip for a late round pick just because of the
Mm.
pedigree and um,
Yeah.
even just based off of what we gave P.O. Joseph. Like I would honestly at this point be shopping him around to any, do the Sabres, do the Senators, do some of these like do the Sharks want a chance on Scott Perunovich for like a sixth or a
Hmm.
seventh round pick?
Hmm.
I mean, if you could get Robert Bortuzzo for a seventh round pick, you could get Scott Perunovich for a sixth, I would think.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I think his time on the Blues is done.
When when Letty comes back, would you put Perunovich on waivers, like try to get him down to Springfield?
I don't think so. He's making 1.15 million this year, and he has another year of his rights still being retained. So you'd expect that number to be around there again, and I
Hmm.
just don't think that's for a team about to enter a window, hopefully, maybe entering one as we speak.
Hmm.
This is where you got to start making cuts where you can, and I think Scott Pernovich is probably where I'd start that list.
A sad day. A sad day. We were so hopeful, and I'm not giving up. I don't know. It's like you can only say you're holding out hope for so long. It just hasn't worked out. So I would love for him to get one more look and then just like look fantastic, and then hope that I don't know. I don't know, man. Oh well. So, what else have you seen that's been bad from the Blues this week?
Um, the big there's one quick thing, and then we can dive into the other. So,
Hmm.
just special teams have been as advertised as expected. Unfortunately, there's been no growth there. Right now, our power play ranks 25th in the league at 15%. That is quite bad.
Hmm.
And the penalty kill is tied for 22nd at 75%. 75% is a much more respectable number, but still not good at all.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, it's just been horrible. Coaching
Do you
hasn't helped.
do you want to talk a little bit maybe like about what you've seen specifically from the power play and the penalty kill that isn't working? It's like, do you have any thoughts there?
So on the power play, it's just so stiff. I feel like that power play unit is still doing decent,
Hmm.
um, but the even then, like that can't alone carry a power play.
Right.
I don't hate how they play, but I feel like that's more in the skill of the players. It's just anyone they put on the second power play just is so unbelievably terrible.
Hmm.
It's so stiff. The passes are disjointed. They're losing battles like up in the zone, like by the blue
Hmm.
line, which
Hmm.
is and then just can't find a way to establish the offensive zone. And like with all the speed on this team too, you'd expect them to be able to at least like get into the zone. They can't get any momentum going in any way, and it's yeah, I've used it before, but it's anemic to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's one thing to have a decent top unit, but if you don't have the depth there, then it's like it's just not going to work out, and you're not going to see results. So, sort of a common issue, sort of around the Blues lineup, right, is some decent talent at the top, but when you like look further down the depth chart and get into sort of those like secondary lines and things like that, it doesn't look good. So
Hmm.
that has been disappointing. And a chronic issue with the Blues. So, um, yeah, I don't know, man.
Yep.
This is sort of like the bad segment, so it's like it's tough to take away a whole lot other than it's been bad. But
Do you want to talk about the other part?
yeah, I mean, one thing that I think has been like a chronic trend for this team that is really bad is just that they've been trailing in so many games. It's in 6 of their 9 games, they've been trailing by 2 or more goals, and they have come back to win 2 of those 6, but have lost the other 4. And I mean, it's nice when you come back and win, right? And it's an exciting comeback win, and that was sort of like the early identity that we were talking about, like with this Blues team, is that they're like the comeback kids, and like when they get down in the fight, they're not out. But it's continued to be a pretty concerning trend. It's like especially playing down to bad opponents, like the Montreal Canadiens loss was really just.
Hmm.
I mean, it's there are sort of like secondary takeaways where it's like, okay, like the Blues looked just like okay, like with their offensive pressure, they didn't look bad, and also the Canadians got fantastic goaltending that night from their goalie, but um, when you continue to trail by multiple goals in so many games, like literally 2/3 of their games, that is like that's not a sustainable trend. Like at some point, you've got to be able to take the advantage in the game early, if you want to have a chance to win those games and climb the standings. Like we saw it with the Leafs game. They jumped on it early. They were looking good, and that was maybe their like best team performance of the season so far. I thought they looked fantastic, like as a team against the Leafs, but in like so many of their games, they've just been the losing team for way too much time. Do you have anything to
I
add on
think
that?
this is the yeah, I think this is the result of like that what we've been talking about in very broad terms before of like starting slow, looking disconnected, entering a game, like playing kind of sloppy. The result of that in the National Hockey League is you're gonna fall behind in games,
Hmm.
especially when you play against well coached teams like the Carolina Hurricanes, like the Winnipeg Jets, like in any given season the numbers change, but arguably, I don't know, most of the league.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's unacceptable. And I guess the positive takeaway here is that well they're falling down, but we're seeing them fight in these games. But also they have a 2-4 record in those games that they've been down 2 goals or
Hmm.
more, so they can fight, but they can't get the job done more than half the time. That's going to lead to a losing team record if we're falling behind in 2/3 of games, and
Hmm.
math is whatever. Um, yeah, it can't happen.
It would be nice to see that fight emerge at the beginning when it's 0-0, right?
Yep.
And it's like you said, it's good to see them be able to sort of elevate their play when they need, like when they're down, and then when it's when the pressure's on. It's good to see them be able to kick it into that higher gear. But it's like where was this before? This is not something that can continue if the Blues want to have any chance of making the playoffs this year. So
Yep.
that has been bad. Let's talk now about some things that are sort of more in the murky middle. Are they bad? Are they like? Can we give them a pass on some of this stuff? And what do you want to start with on this category?
I want to start with something that I was actually surprised to read when
Hmm.
I looked this up, but the Blues are actually eighth in the NHL in penalty minutes. And that means eighth lowest, like eighth
Right.
best. So they've
Yeah.
been playing very disciplined, which hasn't felt that way. Maybe it was just the
Hmm.
the Canadians' loss was so bad. I guess, I mean, looking back to like the Leafs was a pretty disciplined game, and I don't know. Sports fan in me will always remember the bad as awful. But anyways, yeah, playing another good way to buck this trend of um, falling behind in games is not giving your opponent an odd man advantage when you already have poor special teams play. So I think that should help them if they can continue to just be top half. They don't have to be top 10, although that would be nice too.
Hmm.
But if they can continue to just be top half in the league, I think that can sort of make up for and excuse some of their mistakes, which is another formula they can use to win.
Hmm. Yeah, you're not going to get a power play goal scored on you when you don't give up those penalties. So that has been decent. I mean, like, yeah, that's been some positive takeaway that we can make. You sort of mentioned it already, but um, can we give the Blues a pass when they go up against a goaltender who has like a fantastic night, like a career night? Like in the case of, I think the Canadians goalie that night was Montembeau. Like had a like he's been one of the better goalies this year, and so he had a fantastic night when they played the Jets. Connor Hellebuck, like if it wasn't Connor Hellebuck, the Blues would have won that game.
I think he stole that game.
He stole that game for the Jets. The Blues had some fantastic looks late in the game that if it was any like probably any other goalie, but one of the best goalies in the world, I think the Blues could have won that game for sure. And it's like he's on the team. We can't say that that was like technically a Blues win or anything like that. But can we give them a pass when the team they're playing against just gets a fantastic performance like that from their goalie, and like most nights we probably wouldn't see that again, you know?
It's tough because you don't want to just excuse losses. I think this early in the season, it's easier to do that. I also want to take a trend of looking at other goalie performances throughout the year. So literally just going through the schedule, um, scraped by with a comeback win against a bad goalie in Seattle,
Mhm.
scraped by with an overtime win against a bad goalie in San Jose, lost to, I don't know, I'll say an okay goalie in Vegas, comeback loss. I guess it wouldn't be a comeback, but you know, um, played against a bad goalie in Minnesota and got thrashed. Beat Sorokin in overtime. It took us to overtime to do it, but that's a good win against a good goaltender. Beat a good goaltender in Carolina.
Yeah.
Barely lost to Hellebuck. Beat a pretty bad goaltender in Toronto and lost to a good goaltender in Montreal. So I'm not even sure if I see a trend there, but it does feel like, I guess that first week of play is really skewing things here because there were some really poor performances against poor goalies. But since then, it feels like that there's been mostly they are able to fight and hang. And if we just look at like on those lists of the elite goalies, Hellebuck, Sorokin, and in Carolina, having a record of 2-1 there, I guess that's okay. So looking at it through a bigger picture, I'd say it is kind of excusable. Although if we throw Montembeau onto that list, it's 2-2. So I
Mhm.
mean, I guess it's kind of okay at this point in the season, but it's not going to be something that I will say for the entirety of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like we've seen Blues games already where our goalies have a great game and we still lose. So it's like we can't. The Blues as a team have to be able to overcome good goalie performances to be a legit team. And I mean, I'm not saying that they are like a contender. I'm not saying that they can be this year, but that's something that they'll have to address, like long term. They'll just have to be able to become more offensively adaptable to situations like that where the goalie you're going up against is having a great night. So on the goalie note, let's talk about Joel Hofer, who we haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
Um, all these games that the Blues played were started by Jordan Bennington this week, who's been good. He's had some good nights in there, and some shakier nights, like the Canadians loss, I think in particular. But where's Joel Hofer, Alec? What'd you do with him?
That's a great question, John, because I'd like to know too. I seem to have lost my Joel Hofer and I can't find him.
um, Joel Hofer, to me, has earned like a 50-50 split, honestly. Like at this point, I think they should be giving him more chances. He's leading the Blues in save percentage. I just looked at it. Let me see if I can find it again. Um, he has a
20.
932 save percentage according to the Athletic. What did you find?
I was looking at a different game. I just
Okay,
realized.
gotcha. Yeah, he's got a 932 save percentage. He has a 960 save percentage on unblocked shots, which is pretty solid. And he also has yeah, let's see, two, like where would it go? 0.5 goals saved above expected, so not a whole lot in that metric yet. But the Blues, sort of as a goalie tandem, have been great in that stat. I believe they're like somewhere around 10th in the NHL in that stat as a collective goalie staff. So that's been really good to see. Do you think I'm a little too high on Joel Hofer saying he should be playing half of our games, or do you think Bennington has sort of earned the right to still take the majority there?
I think probably 50-50 split is a little bit too much. I think if this were like, um, franchise hockey manager save or whatever, maybe that's a different conversation. But I think given the conversation, given the track record, given whatever, you still want Bennington. I think it should be more like 2 out of 3, and every third game Hofer should play.
Mhm.
And like, yeah, I was looking, I didn't see any storylines about this. Maybe I just missed something, or maybe there was genuinely nothing. But like, I was shocked that he wasn't playing in that Montreal game. We
Yeah.
didn't see him at all in week 3, and I mean, yeah, you got to give this guy a run with the way that he's playing. And looking at Montreal, who's having a pretty good season, okay so far. I don't know, like I can't believe that they didn't play Hofer, especially after coming off the Jets and the Maple Leafs. I just I'm shocked. I don't know. Where is he? What did you do with him?
I I seem to have misplaced my Joel Hoofer. I wish I could tell you what happened to him, but yeah, I mean, it seemed like the Montreal game is like the perfect time to play Hofer. Like if you're concerned that he's not as good as Jordan Bennington, like you need like play him against like teams like the Canadians, who at this point in the season aren't a very good team. I don't think anyone thinks they're very good. I mean, like they're trending up as a team. They've got a lot of good young talent, and they've got high hopes and sort of lofty goals this year, to sort of return to the playoffs. And a lot of people think they are capable of it, but I think up to this point they haven't really shown that. So if you're concerned, like if the reason they're not playing Joel Hofer as much is that they're worried about his performance relative to Jordan Bennington's performance, and like you have to take advantage of those games against teams like the Canadians and play him there, because I don't think Jordan Bennington had a great night. Maybe Joel Hofer could have, but that's sort of you know
Yeah, I mean,
there.
hindsight is 2020, obviously, but in my opinion, that was Bennington's worst game of the season by a decent margin. I mean, the Wild game was bad too, but I would put that more as a team loss. I think I'm not saying it's Bennington's fault that we lost to Montreal,
Hmm.
but he was like one of the bigger factors in that loss. I think he did not show up.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. So, I mean, moving forward, they've got a stretch now where they're about to play some other sort of I guess poorer opponents, not super um, not super high level teams. I wouldn't say there's there's a couple in there. I mean, like Ottawa Senators are pretty good. They're 4-0 right now. As we talk
They're
today,
okay.
yeah. I mean, they're okay. I think they're sort of similar to the Blues in terms of like talent and sort of projectable outcomes. But they're about to go play the Philadelphia Flyers later this week. So I mean, it's important to take advantage of
I
these
believe
games
the
against.
Flyers have the worst goaltending situation in the league.
Right.
Let me get the stats on that right now, though. But
And then after that Flyers game, they're going to go on to play in a row the Maple Leafs, the Lightning, Utah, the Capitals, the Bruins. I mean, like those are good teams, and like you want Jordan Bennington to be able to be rested against those teams, and um, I don't know. I just feel like they should be taking advantage more of this stretch against these not so good teams, and um, like especially after that performance against Montreal, like just give Jordan Bennington a chance to rest and reset. And I hope there's not like an injury situation or anything with Hofer. I'm not saying that I think there is, but like I just don't know why we haven't seen him. But yeah,
I wouldn't hate seeing him back to back games against both the Sens and the Flyers this week.
yeah,
Also, yeah, the Flyers as a team, 853 save percentage, an average of 4.4 goals allowed per game. You got to put up points. You
yeah,
got to put pucks in the net in that
yeah.
game.
They cannot continue to play down to these opponents. Like the Flyers are like one of the worst teams right now. I think
Yeah.
maybe second worst after the Sharks. But yeah, they just have to come away with 2 points there. But Joel Hofer last week on our extension episode, we said pay to man. On this episode, I'll say play to man. So give him a start.
Good
Um,
one.
Thank you, appreciate that. let's wrap up by talking about some line combinations discussion, some stuff like that. But before we do, if you want to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us out a whole lot. Follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen, and then you can follow us on social media at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Alex been posting some great memes and short form videos lately that I think people would enjoy. So check those out for sure. Um, the line combinations. Before we sort of get into some specifics of like players and where they should play and things like that, I want to talk about this sort of trend of Drew Bannister and the Blues as a team. Um, we've seen so many different permutations of this lineup. Essentially, it's like uh, they just keep changing them game to game, and it's like Robert Thomas. I think I saw a quote somewhere. Not sure where exactly. I would have to double check, but he sort of mentioned it can be tough. Like when you're not playing with the same guys night in, night out, um, it takes time to sort of learn who you're playing with, and isn't really maybe all that doable during the single off day before a game. And I don't know. Do you have any thoughts there? It seems like Drew Bannister and his coaching staff are trying to figure out what works, and you don't really get a good idea of what will work until you see it on the ice. But I think there's something to be said for consistency and letting players learn who they're playing with, like especially the Blues centers, learning who they have on their wing um, and you know their play style and how much offense they can expect out of them and stuff like that. But do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, like I guess I hope that it is a trend that doesn't continue. Because like if they are trying to see what works, then hopefully they'd take no more than the first month. But
Mm-hmm.
also like I don't really know that you can call what you're seeing a good enough sample size to judge anything anyways. So like
It's true.
I have been pretty I don't know if disappointed is where I'm at yet, but maybe to a lesser degree, just underwhelmed by Bannister's job so far this season.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be a broader discussion we get into later once we have more sample size. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the still like playing flat as well as this line combinations aspect of it has been the most upsetting things. And I'll touch on that second part now. Um, I just don't really love the lines that he's putting together. It feels like there's a lot of uncomplimentary skill sets playing, like Shen trying out Shen as the 1C. Did we really need to know what was going to happen there? I mean, I guess it was a good result of a game, but I don't know that I was impressed by Shen's play. Um, yeah, moving around, especially like the top line too. Like it feels like if you have one line you want set, it's your top line so
Yeah.
that you can actually like get an identity as a team formed. And it feels like we're close there. Like with Thomas out, Buch and Kyrie have been killing it. And maybe if
Mm-hmm.
you want to say that they have to stick on the second line so that it doesn't feel weird. Well, I don't know. I don't really know that I agree with that anyway. Um, yeah, I have really not liked a lot of the personnel and format decisions of Bannister so far. And I agree with that quote you said, like find something that works, even if it maybe isn't the 100% outcome. If it's like the 90th or 80th percent outcome, just stick with it so that it can become better.
Yeah. I think sort of like in Bannister's defense, he's been given like a team with a lot of sort of changeover, like a lot of change, especially in the forward lines, bringing in Matthew Joseph, Texier, Faxa, and then also the sort of the not really introduction because we saw them last year, but sort of the increased playing time you're seeing from guys like Bolduc, and it's I guess it's just sort of tough to know like maybe where they'll fit in. Dylan Holloway as well, of course, and so like in his defense, like it's a lot of new faces, and so it's it's tough to know like where they'll fit in right away. But I do agree. I think they
We
just
are almost a month into the season now.
yeah, yeah, that's true. So at some point I'd like to start seeing some consistency. I think the most like consistent we've seen is um, Buchnevich and Kyrie together. They've played with Texier a fair bit. We've also seen Buchnevich play with like Bolduc a fair bit. Um, Obviously, Robert Thomas played with Jake Neighbors a lot, but he's out. So um, I think we'll see. I think we'll continue to see some line shuffling in the coming games as Robert Thomas is injured and out. I think it'll take some time to figure out what they are to do. So hopefully they can find something that works and stick with it. Honestly, but
I want to get your thoughts on how have you felt about trying Holloway at center at like 3C?
I like him a lot better on the wing. Honestly, I think I don't know. Did he play both games at center this week?
I'll look that up right now.
He did. He played
Yeah.
3C for both
Yep.
games. I mean, um, in the game against the Leafs, I didn't hate it, honestly. But I think against the Canadians, it just I don't know, it just looked a little shakier. Like I'm not sure the playmaking ability is there. Like I think the scoring ability is there. He scored a pretty cool goal. I think it was that Leafs game where he sort of just like slid it under the goalie's legs, like between the legs and sort of nutmegged him, which was pretty cool. Like I like his scoring ability, but I think his skill set is a lot more compatible with being a winger. So I mean, I think I'm sort of that's sort of my general thoughts, but I'm also willing to sort of reserve final judgment until we get a little bit of a larger sample size, like you were saying. But yeah, what do you think?
Honestly, I think I'm starting to come around to it more. I agree with you that I do think his skill set profile is better as a winger, but I think especially during the time that Thomas is out, I do actually think that this is an experiment I'm willing to let just play out.
Mm,
And I kind of do want to see him trying out a bottom of the lineup winger or a center, excuse me, at least until Thomas is out because he I thought it has played pretty well and
mhm.
defensively has the chops for it too. So um, I don't know. I like it and I'm definitely coming around to it.
Yeah, I can see myself coming around to it. I'm also sort of in the boat of like I think this season should be very experimental for the Blues, and I think they should. I mean, I say that, and then I also get frustrated when Bannister switches the lines around. But like, I think sort of over the entire course of the season, it shouldn't be so much like so erratic, but like maybe see, Holloway take a run at center for maybe a more extended period and see if it works. Like I am open to that. I don't I'm not really in favor of like constant lineup shuffle, but I think this is sort of a season where they should see what they have with these young players. But I think the way that it's happening right now is just a little frustrating and a little disjointed. Um,
Hmm.
any specific players that you want to talk about? I mean, you mentioned Holloway at center. Any other forwards on sort of the line construction note?
I think also I've sort of touched on it, but just like I feel like we know what we're getting with Braden Shen. I don't know that
Yeah,
I need experiments there. Also, it
yeah,
feels like Saad doesn't really have a role yet.
mm,
It feels like they want him in the middle, or it feels like I want him in the middle six, but he's been playing on the top line to start, but then usually like mid game they'll move him back down.
mm-hmm.
Um, I've really liked Texier playing in the middle six. I'd like to see him stay there, and yeah, it's just all around weird.
It is weird. I mean, like on the Brandon Sod note, you said, we know what we're getting from Braden Shen, and we don't need to see him get looks at the top line. But with like Brandon Sod, we also know what we're getting. But in his case, it's like 20 plus goals, and I think I've sort of said before, I think he can do that anywhere. And like I don't think he needs to be on the top line every night to be able to score 20 plus goals. I did like what we saw from him against the Jets, scoring two on Connor Hellebuck, so he was pretty good in that game, but. Um, I don't think he needs to be on the top line necessarily. But then again, like who else would you put on the top line?
If you're playing Holloway at center, I think, and it depends if the top line is Kyra Booch or not. I
Mhm.
actually would do Kyra Booch and
Yeah.
probably with like Neighbors.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's what I would do too. We sort of talked about with Robert Thomas out, do you just plug someone else in on the top line, or do you elevate that second line of Buchnevich, Kyrou? And I sort of made the case for elevating the second line. I think that's what we saw in one of these games. Yeah, against the Canadians, it was Buchnevich, Kyrou, and Texier on the top line. Um, they did end up losing that game, so but we can see if that trend will continue or not. But I sort of like Buch, Kyrou, and Neighbors. I think that could be cool to see for an extended period of time. Because just like the other centers that we have, they're just not top line players. I don't know. Like it just and it like we said last week, this just points to the lack of center depth that the Blues have, and it's a bigger issue than just like we just need to find someone else to plug in here. It is like a organizational depth chart issue where beyond Robert Thomas, who is fantastic, there just isn't anyone else. So like I say elevate Buch Kairu, but like that's not exactly a long-term solution, and it's not what you want. I don't think out of to see on your top line. But what do you think of Buchnevich at center? Real quick, any thoughts on Buch playing center?
I still think it's going just so unbelievably well.
Hmm.
And I never would have thought of it, I guess, because he was just so good as a winger. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm sticking with that if I'm Bannister and the Blues coaching staff for sure.
I like it too. I think he's just like a really smart player and is able to sort of, I guess, make up for his. I mean, I've talked about his sort of he just can't win the face-offs. It seems like, which is
Yeah,
a big part of being a center. But like I think with the other parts of his game, he's sort of making up for that. Like he's still like decently a sound defensive player, and is of course a great offensive talent. I think he, similar to Holloway, is much better as a winger. Um, I think best case scenario, you'd have another answer at center, and Buchnevich could continue to be like a top line winger. So maybe long term the Blues bring in a legit uh, you know top six center, and Buchnevich can slide back out to the wing because I don't know, like I don't think he's the long term answer. But yeah, I don't know. Bring in Mitch Marner, let him play center. Um, any other thoughts on the line combinations?
um, not really. Just give my boy Texier some love, and Jake Neighbors is doing Jake Neighbors things. That's always fun to
Mhm.
see.
Yeah, he's really turned it around, hasn't he? Like the first few games in the season were pretty underwhelming. We weren't seeing a lot from him, but 4 goals now, right? Is that the right number? Um, and yeah, he's looking good. He looks like Jake
Mm-hmm.
Neighbors again. So that's been cool to
Yeah.
see. Um, well, I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of Note News. We'll be back hopefully later this week, maybe with an exciting announcement. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So stay tuned for that if you want to hear what that may be. I think the best way to to do that is to follow us on social media at Note News Pod on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow and rate the podcast wherever you listen. We appreciate all that have done that so far, and yeah, keep it up. We just got to 200 subs. Let's get to 300. Uh, yeah. So thanks to everyone who has done that already. So that's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time on Note News, and let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.